Welcome to my Channel Deep Sleep Mission-DSM. As we begin, I would be delighted if you could share your location in the comments below. It's truly inspiring to witness how far this content travels and to connect with viewers from across the world. They knew my name before I told them, not the mushrooms, the people who found me. 3 hikers discovered me wandering the trails of Mount Baker National Forest at dawn, my clothes torn, my hands covered in dirt, and something else. Something that glowed faintly blue in the morning light. When they called out to me, they used my full name, Rebecca Ann Thornton. Middle name and all. I'd never seen them before in my life, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you what really happened in those woods, and before you think this is just another campfire story, I have proof. Check the news reports from Whatcom County, Washington, dated October 15th, 2024. 4 people missing, 3 found, 1 still out there. All right, here we go. The story starts now. My best friend Sarah convinced me to go mushroom hunting. Not the magic kind, just regular foraging for chanterelles and oyster mushrooms. It was supposed to be a simple weekend trip to her family's cabin near Mount Baker. Just me, Sarah, her boyfriend Marcus, and Marcus's roommate Tyler, who none of us really knew that well. It'll be like a double date, Sarah had said, wiggling her eyebrows at me over our Thursday night margaritas at Chili's. Tyler's cute, he works in tech. I wasn't interested in Tyler or his tech job, but I was interested in getting out of Seattle for a weekend. The October rain had been particularly depressing that year, and the idea of crisp mountain air and cozy cabin nights sounded perfect. We drove up Friday afternoon in Marcus's Subaru Outback, because of course he had a Subaru. The cabin sat about 40 minutes from the main road, tucked into a grove of Douglas firs so thick that cell service dropped to nothing about halfway there. Sarah had warned me about this. Digital detox, she'd chirped, tossing her iPhone into the glove compartment with theatrical flair. The cabin was exactly what you'd expect. Wood paneling, stone fireplace, that distinctive smell of pine and old memories. Sarah's grandparents had built it in the 70s, and it showed. Shag carpet in the bedrooms, avocado green appliances in the kitchen, a collection of Reader's Digest condensed books that probably hadn't been touched since Reagan was president. We settled in quickly. Sarah and Marcus took the master bedroom. Tyler got the small room with twin beds. I claimed the pull-out couch in the living room, which suited me fine. I've always been a night owl, and I like the idea of staying up late by the dying fire with a book. That first night was perfect. We grilled burgers on the ancient Weber outside, drank local IPAs, played Cards Against Humanity until we were all crying with laughter. Tyler turned out to be funnier than I expected, with a dry sense of humor that caught me off guard. When he smiled, really smiled, one dimple appeared on his left cheek, not that I was paying attention. Around midnight, after the others had gone to bed, I sat alone by the fireplace with a dog-eared copy of The Stand I'd found on the bookshelf. The rain had started again, pattering against the windows in that rhythmic way that makes you drowsy. I was just about to call it a night when I heard it. A voice. Soft, coming from somewhere outside. Rebecca. I froze. The book slipped from my hands. Rebecca Ann. My middle name. Nobody here knew my middle name. Hell, I never used it. It wasn't on my driver's license, my social media, nothing. Only my mother called me Rebecca Ann, and only when I was in serious trouble. I stood up slowly, my heart hammering. The voice seemed to be coming from the forest behind the cabin. It wasn't calling exactly, more like breathing my name into existence. Rebecca Ann Thornton. My full name. Every hair on my arms stood up. I should have woken the others, should have locked the doors and hidden under the covers like a rational person. Instead, I found myself walking to the back door, pressing my face against the cold glass. The forest was dark. So dark it looked solid, like a wall of black paint. But there, about 50 feet from the cabin, Was that a light? A faint blue glow, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. The voice came again, and this time I was certain it was coming from that light. "Rebecca Ann Thornton, come see what grows." My hand was on the doorknob before I realized what I was doing. The rational part of my brain screamed at me to stop, to go wake up Tyler or Marcus or anyone. But my body moved on its own, turning the knob, opening the door to the cold October night. The air smelled different out here. Under the pine and rain was something else. Something sweet and rotten at the same time, like overripe fruit mixed with copper pennies. I took one step outside, then another. My bare feet sank into the wet grass. "That's it, come see what knows your name." The blue light pulsed brighter, and now I could see its source. Mushrooms, a perfect circle of them, each one glowing with that soft blue bioluminescence. They were beautiful, absolutely beautiful, like something from a fantasy movie, too perfect to be real. I walked closer, unable to stop myself. The mushrooms were small, delicate things with caps no bigger than quarters. But that glow, God, that glow was mesmerizing. It pulled at something deep in my chest, made my eyes water with its beauty. "We know you, Rebecca Ann. We've been waiting." The voice wasn't coming from one mushroom, but from all of them, a chorus of whispers that seemed to vibrate through the ground and up into my bones. I knelt at the edge of the circle, my hands reaching out. "Don't touch them!" The shout came from behind me. I spun around to see Tyler standing in the doorway, his face pale in the moonlight. He was wearing ridiculous flannel pajama pants and a Nirvana t-shirt, but his expression was dead serious. "Rebecca, get away from them, now!" But it was too late. My fingers had already brushed against one of the glowing caps. The world exploded into blue light. I wasn't in the forest anymore. I stood in a vast space that defied description. Not a room, not outdoors, just an endless expanse of that same blue glow. The ground beneath my feet felt spongy, organic, like I was standing on something alive. And I wasn't alone. They stood in a circle around me, dozens of them. People, but not quite. Their shapes were human enough, but their edges seemed to blur and shift, as if they were made of smoke held together by willpower. And their faces, God, their faces were the worst part. Not because they were monstrous or deformed, because they were familiar. "Welcome, Rebecca Ann," they said in unison, their voices layering over each other like a corrupted audio file. "We've been waiting so long." I tried to speak, but my throat felt full of cotton. One of the figures stepped forward, and I gasped. It was my grandmother. Not as I'd last seen her, dying in a hospital bed, small and frail, but as she appeared in her wedding photos. Young, beautiful, her dark hair pinned up in victory rolls. "Grandma Ruth?" My voice came out as a whisper. She smiled, but it was wrong. Too wide, too knowing. "I'm what remembers her," the thing wearing my grandmother's face said. "What grows from what's left behind. We all are." The circle tightened. I saw other faces now. My high school English teacher who'd died in a car accident. My childhood neighbor who'd passed from cancer. A barista from my favorite coffee shop who'd simply stopped showing up one day and nobody knew why. All dead. All here. "The mushrooms remember," they said together. "Every person who passes through these woods leaves something behind. A whisper, an echo, a name. We grow from what remains." "This isn't real," I said. But even as the words left my mouth, I knew they were wrong. This was real, too real, the kind of real that makes you question everything else. "You're special, Rebecca Ann," not Grandma Ruth said, reaching out with fingers that seemed to phase in and out of existence. "Your family has deep roots here. Your blood calls to us." "My family?" I took a step back, but the circle moved with me. "What are you talking about?" "Your great-great-grandfather built a logging camp here, right where we grow. So many names were left in this soil, so many echoes. The Thornton blood runs deep. Memories surfaced. Vague family stories about ancestors in the logging industry. My mom mentioning something about family land near Mount Baker. Details I'd never paid attention to. We've been calling your family home for generations, the figures continued. But you're the first to answer. The first to touch us willingly. I didn't mean to. Intention doesn't matter, connection does. And now you're connected. Part of the network. Part of what grows and whispers and remembers. I felt it then. A presence in my mind. Alien and invasive. Like roots spreading through my thoughts. Cataloging my memories. Learning who I was down to the smallest detail. Every embarrassing moment. Every secret. Every name I'd ever known. No! I tried to pull away, but there was nowhere to go. The blue light was everywhere, inside me now, pulsing with my heartbeat. Don't fight it. Not Grandma Ruth said gently. It's easier if you don't fight. Soon you'll understand. Soon you'll help us call others. Their names are already rising in your throat. She was right. I could feel them. Names bubbling up from somewhere deep. Sarah Michelle Foster, Marcus Chen, Tyler James Brennan. Not just their names, but everything about them. Their fears, their secrets. Their essence distilled into syllables I could speak into existence. That's it, the figures crooned. Let us in. Let us grow. The blue light grew brighter, so bright it hurt. I was dissolving, becoming part of something vast and hungry and ancient. In moments, I would be gone, just another echo, another whisper in the dark. Rebecca! Tyler's voice cut through everything like a blade, real, solid, human. The blue world shattered. I was back in the forest, on my knees at the edge of the mushroom circle. Tyler had his arms around me, dragging me backward. The mushrooms pulsed angrily, their glow flickering like dying light bulbs. Don't look at them, he said urgently. Don't listen. They're not what they seem. But I could still hear them. Fainter now, but there. A chorus of names being whispered into the night. Sarah Michelle Foster, Marcus Chen, Tyler James Brennan, and one more name, a new one, fresh. Rebecca Ann Thornton. Tyler half carried, half dragged me back to the cabin. My legs felt like jelly, and that blue light still danced at the edges of my vision. He slammed the door behind us and immediately started pushing the heavy bookshelf in front of it. Help me, he grunted. We need to barricade everything. Tyler, what the hell was that? Not now. Help me first. Something in his voice, pure terror barely held in check, got me moving. We shoved furniture against all the doors, drew the curtains tight. Tyler even stuffed towels under the door gaps. The whole time I could hear it. That whispered chorus of names getting louder. We need to wake the others, I said. No. Tyler grabbed my arm. They can't know, not yet. If they know, it makes them vulnerable. The mushrooms. They feed on recognition, on understanding. The more you know about them, the stronger their pull becomes. How do you know all this? He looked at me then, really looked at me. And I saw the haunted expression in his eyes, because I've seen them before. Different forest, same things. I was 12, camping with my scout troop near Mount Rainier. One of the kids, Danny Morrison, he found a circle just like that one. Touched them before anyone could stop him. Tyler sat down heavily on the couch, running his hands through his hair. He vanished for 3 days. When they found him, he was different. Knew things about people he shouldn't know, private things, secret things. He'd whisper names in his sleep, and whoever's name he spoke, they'd disappear within a week. That's impossible. Is it? He gestured toward the barricaded door. After what you just saw? I wanted to argue, but the memory of that blue place, those familiar faces that weren't quite right, stopped me. What happened to Danny? Institutionalized, Last I heard, he was still there, still whispering names. They keep him sedated most of the time because when he's awake, Tyler shuddered. When he's awake, he tries to get back to the forest, says the mushrooms are calling him home. We sat in silence for a moment. Outside, the rain had stopped, making the whispers seem louder. I could make out individual voices now. My grandmother, my teacher, all those dead faces speaking living names. "Why didn't you warn us?" I asked finally. "Would you have believed me? Hey guys, don't touch any glowing mushrooms in the forest because they're actually some kind of parasitic consciousness that feeds on human memories." He laughed bitterly. I didn't even want to come on this trip, but Marcus insisted, and I thought maybe I was crazy. Maybe what happened when I was 12 was just trauma, false memories. Until I saw you walking toward them. "They knew my name," I whispered, "my full name. Said my family had roots here." Tyler's face went even paler. "Family connection, that's bad, really bad. It means they've been waiting for you specifically, calling you home. Home to what?" Before he could answer, we heard footsteps upstairs. Slow, deliberate. Too heavy to be Sarah, too light to be Marcus. "Did someone else come with us?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Tyler shook his head, his eyes fixed on the ceiling. The footsteps moved across the floor above us, stopping directly overhead. Then, in a voice that was almost but not quite human, we heard, "Tyler James Brennan. We know your name too. We remember what you tried to forget." The light bulb above us exploded in a shower of sparks and blue light. In the darkness, Tyler grabbed my hand. His palm was slick with sweat, trembling slightly. We could hear movement now, not just from upstairs but from all around the cabin, scratching at the windows, tapping at the doors, and underneath it all, that constant whisper of names. "We need to get Sarah and Marcus," I said. "Get to the car. Get out of here." "It won't work." Tyler's voice was hollow. "I tried to run before, with Danny. The scout leaders packed us all up, tried to drive away, but the road kept leading back to the same spot, like reality was broken. We drove for hours and never got more than a mile from camp. A door slammed upstairs, then another and another, far too many doors for a cabin this size. 'Sarah,' I called out. 'Marcus?' No response, just more footsteps, more doors. The sound was multiplying, echoing, becoming a rhythm that matched my racing heartbeat. 'They're creating spaces,' Tyler whispered. 'Doors that shouldn't exist. Rooms that weren't there before. The mushrooms, they don't just feed on memories, they use them. Reshape reality based on what they've absorbed.' As if to prove his point, I noticed a door in the wall beside us. A door that definitely hadn't been there 5 minutes ago. It was painted avocado green to match the kitchen appliances, but something about it was wrong. The dimensions were off. Too tall, too narrow. And the doorknob. The doorknob was pulsing with blue light. "Don't," Tyler warned, but I was already reaching for it. I had to know, had to see. The knob was warm under my fingers, almost alive. I turned it slowly, and the door swung open to reveal my childhood bedroom, perfect in every detail. The unicorn wallpaper I'd picked out when I was 7, the canopy bed with its pink ruffles, even my collection of Beanie Babies arranged just how I'd left them. But the window, instead of showing my old backyard, the window looked out onto that same dark forest. And in the distance, getting closer, was a spreading blue glow. "Close it!" Tyler yanked me back, slamming the door. But when I looked again, there were 2 doors now. Then 3. Then 5. All slightly different. All wrong. "We're losing," he said. "They're rewriting the cabin. Soon there won't be anywhere left that's real." That's when we heard Sarah scream. Not a normal scream. This was primal, terrified, the kind of sound that makes your DNA remember why we used to huddle around fires at night. It came from everywhere and nowhere. echoing through doors that shouldn't exist. "Sarah!" I ran for the stairs, Tyler right behind me. But the stairs weren't right anymore. They went up and up and up, far higher than the cabin should allow. At each landing was another door. Behind each door was another scream. Sarah's. Marcus's. Voices I didn't recognize. We climbed until my legs burned, until the air felt thin. Finally, we reached a landing that looked familiar. The hallway to the bedrooms. But there were too many doors here too, stretching in both directions like a hotel corridor. "Which one?" I asked desperately. Tyler closed his eyes, concentrating. "The real one will feel different. Colder. The mushrooms can't perfectly replicate life. There's always something missing." I touched each door as we passed. Warm, warm, warm. Then, there. The master bedroom door was cold as ice. We burst through to find Sarah and Marcus huddled in the corner. But something was wrong with Marcus. His eyes were that familiar blue, and when he spoke it wasn't his voice. "She fought so hard," the thing wearing Marcus's face said. "But we know her name now. Sarah Michelle Foster. Born June 3rd, 1998. Afraid of spiders. Allergic to shellfish. First kiss was with Tommy Chen behind the gymnasium in 8th grade." "Stop it," Sarah sobbed. "Marcus, please." "Marcus is learning," not Marcus continued. "Learning what we are. What we've always been. The forest remembers everything, Sarah. Every person who died here, every name spoken in these woods. We grow from death, but we hunger for life." He took a step toward us, and I saw the blue spreading under his skin like veins. "Don't let him touch you," Tyler warned. "Once they're inside someone fully, that person becomes a conduit. They can pull you into the network through physical contact. How do we stop them?" I demanded. "I don't know. I've been running from them for 15 years, avoiding forests, staying in cities. But they called me here anyway, through Marcus. He kept talking about this trip, this cabin, like it was his idea. But it wasn't, was it?" Tyler glared at Not Marcus. "You've been planning this." Not Marcus smiled with too many teeth. "The network grows, city by city, person by person. Soon we won't need the forests. Soon we'll be everywhere. In every shadow, behind every door, whispering every name." That's when I remembered something. A detail from those family stories. My great-great-grandfather's logging camp. How it had burned down. How he'd barely escaped with his life. "Fire," I said. "They're fungi. They burn." Tyler's eyes widened with understanding. We had the same thought at the same time. The stone fireplace downstairs. The pile of old newspapers. The ancient can of lighter fluid in the garage. "Sarah," I said urgently, "we need to go, now." But she was still staring at Marcus, tears streaming down her face. "I can't leave him. That's not him anymore." "You don't understand," she whispered. "I can hear him, the real him. He's still in there, screaming." Not Marcus tilted his head. "She's right. He screams so beautifully. Would you like to hear?" And then Marcus's real voice burst through, raw and terrified. "Help me! Oh God, please! I can see everything. I can see how it ends. They're going to—" The thing cut him off, blue light flashing in its eyes. Enough time to add to our collection. It lunged for Sarah. Tyler threw himself between them, and Not Marcus's hand landed on his shoulder. The effect was instantaneous. Tyler convulsed, his eyes rolling back, that blue light spreading from the point of contact. "No!" I grabbed the bedside lamp and swung it like a club. It connected with Not Marcus's head with a sick crack. He staggered back, black ichor leaking from the wound. "Run!" I screamed at Sarah, dragging the convulsing Tyler with us. We half fell down the impossible stairs, doors slamming open and closed around us, revealing glimpses of other places, other times. I saw my office in Seattle, Sarah's childhood home, a logging camp from a century ago where men in suspenders ran from spreading blue fire. Finally, we crashed into the living room. The furniture we'd used as barricades had been rearranged into a perfect circle. In the center, growing through the floorboards, was a cluster of those glowing mushrooms. "They're inside," Sarah gasped. "They've been inside all along." Tyler's convulsions were getting worse. I could see the blue spreading under his skin, racing toward his heart. Behind us, footsteps on the stairs. Not just one set now, dozens. All those doors opening, all those echoes walking free. I made a decision. "Get Tyler to the car," I told Sarah. "Try to drive. Even if the road loops back, keep trying." "What about you?" I looked at the mushrooms growing through the floor, at the lighter fluid in the garage, at the spreading blue glow that was coming from everywhere now. "I have roots here," I said. "Family connection. Maybe that means something. Maybe I can stop this." "Rebecca, no. Go!" She dragged Tyler out the front door. I heard the car engine start, tires squealing on gravel. Then I was alone with the whispers and the glowing circles and the sound of impossible footsteps getting closer. I grabbed the lighter fluid, doused everything. The mushrooms, the furniture, the walls, the carpet. The thing that used to be Marcus appeared at the bottom of the stairs, black ichor still dripping from its head. "You can't burn us all," it said in that layered voice. "We're in the soil, in the trees, in the rain that falls, and the streams that flow. We are the forest remembering itself." "Maybe," I said, flicking my grandfather's Zippo open, "but I can try." I dropped the lighter. The world exploded into orange and blue, two different fires fighting for dominance. I ran, crashing through the back door into the forest. Behind me, the cabin burned with colors that shouldn't exist. But the mushroom circles were everywhere, hundreds of them, thousands. A fairy ring the size of the entire forest, all pulsing in unison. And from each one, figures were rising. Echoes, memories, the dead walking in borrowed flesh. I ran deeper into the woods, the whispers following me. They spoke every name I'd ever known, every person I'd ever met, every connection I'd ever made. And with each name, I felt myself getting lighter, emptier, like they were stealing pieces of who I was. That's when I understood. The mushrooms didn't just want our bodies. They wanted our connections, our networks. Every person we knew became a door they could walk through. Every name we remembered became a thread they could follow. I was being hollowed out. Soon I'd be just another echo, calling names in the dark. But then I heard it. Through all the whispers, through all the false voices. Tyler's real voice, weak but human. "Rebecca, the road, it's working. The fire broke their hold." I ran toward his voice, crashing through undergrowth. The figures followed, reaching out with hands made of memory and hunger. Behind us, the fire spread from tree to tree, but it wasn't normal fire anymore. It burned blue at the edges, consuming and transforming. I burst out of the tree line to see Tyler's car stopped on the road. Sarah was behind the wheel. Tyler slumped in the passenger seat. His skin still had traces of blue, but it was fading. "Get in!" Sarah screamed. I dove into the back seat as she floored it. In the rearview mirror, I watched the forest burn with impossible light. Figures stood at the edge of the road, watching us go. Some wore faces I recognized. Some wore faces that hadn't been born yet. One of them waved. It looked like me. We made it back to Seattle just as the sun was rising. None of us spoke during the drive. What was there to say? Tyler was hospitalized for what the doctors called an unknown toxin exposure. Sarah and I were treated for smoke inhalation and released. Marcus's body was never found. The official report blamed the cabin fire on old wiring. 3 campers safely evacuated. 1 missing, presumed dead. But I know the truth. We all do. Tyler moved to Arizona the next month. Somewhere dry, somewhere far from forests. Sarah went to therapy, got prescribed pills that helped her sleep without dreams. We don't talk anymore. The memories hurt too much. And me, I stayed in Seattle, I work, I eat, I sleep. I pretend everything is normal, but sometimes on rainy nights I hear them, the whispers, growing stronger. They know my name, you see, my full name, and names have power. Last week I found a mushroom growing in my shower. Small, pale, not glowing yet, but it whispered, and I recognized the voice. It was mine. So, that's my story, every word of it true. And if you don't believe me, well, I don't blame you. I wouldn't have believed it either, not before. But let me ask you something. Have you ever walked in a forest and felt like you were being watched? Ever heard your name on the wind when no one was there to speak it? Ever noticed how some missing persons cases just stop being investigated? The mushrooms are spreading, city by city, person by person. They know our names now, all of our names. And they're so very patient. Sweet dreams. Oh, and one more thing. If you're listening to this late at night, if you're alone in the dark, you might want to check your bathroom. Check the corners where it's damp. Check behind the toilet where no one ever looks. Because I bet, just maybe, you'll find something growing there. Something that glows. Something that whispers. Something that already knows your name. Story number 2. The first time I shook sand out of my sneakers. I laughed, wouldn't you? Standing in my Denver apartment, watching those tiny grains scatter across my hardwood floor, like someone had taken a piece of beach and dropped it right there in my living room. It was Tuesday morning, October 17th, and I hadn't been near water in 3 years, not since Mom's funeral in Florida. But here's the thing that should have made me pay attention. The sand was warm, like it had just been sitting under the summer sun, even though frost covered my windows that morning, and it smelled like salt, that unmistakable ocean smell that makes you think of sunscreen and seagulls. I swept it up, dumped it in the trash, and forgot about it. Until it happened again. Look, before you click away thinking this is just another creepypasta about cursed objects or whatever, let me tell you something. I'm not the kind of person who believes in that stuff. I work in accounting. I drive a Honda Civic. My biggest adventure most weeks is trying a new flavor at the frozen yogurt place. But what happened to me over the next 6 weeks, well, it changed everything I thought I knew about what's real and what isn't. And if you're lying in bed right now, maybe about to drift off to sleep, I need you to do me a favor. Check your shoes. Any of them. Because once you know what to look for, once you understand what the sand means, you might realize you're not as safe as you think. The story I'm about to tell you is true, every word. And by the end, you'll understand why I can never, ever go back to sleep without checking my shoes first. My name is Sarah Chen, and I lived in a 1-bedroom apartment on the 3rd floor of a building that's older than my grandmother would have been. The kind of place where the radiators clang at night and the walls are so thin you can hear your neighbor's Netflix choices. Denver's a landlocked city, about as far from any ocean as you can get in America. The nearest beach is 1,000 miles away? That Tuesday morning started like any other. My alarm went off at 6:30. I hit snooze twice. Finally dragged myself out of bed around 7. Coffee, shower, the usual routine. I was running late for work, as always, so I grabbed my sneakers from beside the door. That's when I felt it. Have you ever walked on a beach barefoot? You know that feeling when sand gets between your toes? That gritty, grinding sensation? That's what I felt when I shoved my foot into my shoe. "What the hell?" I muttered. Pulling my foot back out, I turned the shoe upside down and watched, completely baffled, as sand poured out. Not just a few grains. We're talking maybe a tablespoon's worth. Enough that it formed a small pile on my floor. I stood there for a solid minute, just staring at it. my brain trying to come up with logical explanations. Maybe I'd walked through a sandbox? But when? The nearest playground was blocks away, and I hadn't been there in ever. Maybe it was from winter road treatment? But this wasn't that gross. Gray stuff they put on icy roads. This was beach sand, golden, fine, perfect beach sand. I touched it with my finger. Still warm. That's the detail that made my skin prickle. October in Denver means cold mornings. Everything in my apartment was cold. The floor, the windows, even my coffee got cold too fast. But this sand felt like it had been baking in the sun. I was already late, so I just swept it up, dumped my shoes out good, and headed to work. But all day, I couldn't stop thinking about it. During meetings, while staring at spreadsheets, during my sad desk lunch of leftover pasta. Where had that sand come from? That night, I inspected my shoes more carefully. Nothing unusual, just my beat-up Nikes that I'd had for 2 years. No holes, no obvious way for sand to get in. I even checked the tread, thinking maybe I'd stepped in something and it had worked its way inside. Nothing. I went to bed that night feeling unsettled but trying to rationalize it. Denver's weird. I told myself, maybe wind can carry sand from somewhere. Maybe there was construction nearby using sand. Maybe the next morning, Wednesday. I woke up 5 minutes before my alarm. Something felt off immediately. My feet, they felt gritty. I threw back my covers and saw it. Sand. In my bed, not a lot. Just a light dusting, but enough that I could see it against my dark blue sheets. And my feet. My feet were covered in it. Like I'd been walking on a beach, my heart started racing. I lived alone. My door was locked. Deadbolt and chain. My windows were closed and locked. 3rd floor, remember? No fire escape. No way someone could get in. I jumped out of bed, leaving sandy footprints on my floor, and ran to check my front door. Still locked, windows, all locked, nothing disturbed, nothing out of place, except for the sand. I called in sick to work, spent the entire day deep cleaning my apartment, washed all my bedding, vacuumed every inch of floor, even pulled out my furniture to clean behind it. By evening, I was exhausted but satisfied. No more sand. That night, I did something I'd never done before. I set up my phone to record while I slept, propped it on my dresser, aimed at my bed, and let it run. Thursday morning, more sand. This time, not just in my bed, but trailing from my bed to my bedroom door. Like footprints. My footprints. With shaking hands, I grabbed my phone to check the recording. 8 hours of footage. I fast-forwarded through most of it. Just me. Sleeping. Until 3:17 a.m. At 3:17 a.m., I sat up in bed. Eyes open, but empty. Like I was sleepwalking. I watched myself swing my legs out of bed and stand up. But here's where it gets impossible. When my feet hit the floor, sand appeared beneath them. Not falling from my feet, not already on the floor. It just appeared. With each step I took, more sand materialized. I watched myself walk to my bedroom door, open it, and disappear into the darkness of my living room. The camera angle couldn't see where I went. For 13 minutes, I was gone. Then I came back, got into bed, and lay down. The sand remained. Evidence of my impossible midnight walk. I must have watched that video 50 times. Zooming in, slowing it down, trying to find some explanation. But there wasn't one. The sand just appeared. That's when I started to get really scared. Over the next 2 weeks, it happened every single night. I'd go to bed clean, wake up with sand in my sheets, on my feet, trailing through my apartment. Sometimes I'd find it in other places too. In my kitchen sink, scattered on my bathroom counter. Once, filling one of my coffee mugs. I set up more cameras, borrowed some from friends, told them I was worried about break-ins. Soon I had angles covering my entire apartment, and what I saw made me question my sanity every night. At exactly 3:17 a.m., I would get up and walk, but I wasn't just wandering aimlessly. I was following a specific path from my bed to the living room, where I would stand at my window for exactly 3 minutes, then to the kitchen, where I would open a drawer and stare inside for another 3 minutes, then the bathroom, where I would look in the mirror, never at myself, but past myself. Like I was looking through the mirror at something beyond. Then back to bed. The sand appeared with every step. And it wasn't random. It formed patterns, swirls and curves that looked almost like writing, but not any alphabet I recognized. I tried everything to stop it, locked myself in my bedroom, woke up to find the lock undone from the inside, tied my ankle to the bedpost, woke up with the rope neatly coiled on my nightstand, set dozens of alarms for 3 a.m., slept right through them. Even though normally my phone alarm could wake the dead, I went to a doctor, told her I was sleepwalking. She prescribed some pills, said they should keep me in deeper sleep. They didn't work. If anything, the sand got worse. Started appearing in my shoes again. But not just my sneakers. All my shoes. Every morning. I'd have to dump sand out of every pair I owned. I tried staying awake all night, loaded up on coffee and energy drinks. But as 3:17 approached, I'd feel this pull, like something was dragging me under. I'd fight it, sitting at my kitchen table, slapping myself to stay alert. But I'd always lose. One moment I'd be wide awake, the next I'd be waking up at 3:30 in my bed, covered in sand. My friends started to worry. I was missing work, looking haggard. My best friend, Jenna, came over one night, said she'd stay up and watch me, make sure I didn't sleepwalk. "Sarah, this is insane," she said, looking at my camera setup. "What are you really looking for?" I showed her the videos. She watched, her face going from skeptical to confused to frightened. That's not possible," she whispered, watching the sand appear beneath my feet. "It's some kind of trick, right? Special effects?" I showed her the sand I'd collected, jars of it by now, had it tested at a lab, paid out of pocket to have its composition analyzed. You know what they found? It wasn't from Colorado, wasn't from any beach in the continental United States. The mineral composition matched beaches in the Mediterranean, specifically a region near Greece. I'd never been to Greece, never been to Europe. Hell, I'd barely left Colorado except for family trips to Florida and that one spring break in California. Jenna stayed that night, set her alarm for 3 a.m., promised she'd keep me in bed. I woke up at 3:31 a.m. to find her passed out on my couch, snoring softly, and me covered in sand as usual. The cameras showed the same routine, but this time they caught something else. As I stood at the window, Jenna had gotten up too, walked to the window and stood beside me. Both of us staring out at nothing, just the Denver skyline. But our eyes were focused on something else, something beyond. When I woke Jenna up, she had no memory of it, swore she'd been asleep the whole time. But there was sand on her feet too. She left that morning and hasn't answered my calls since. I was alone with this, whatever this was, by early November. I was desperate. I'd lost my job, couldn't explain why I kept missing work. My apartment was constantly gritty with sand despite daily vacuuming. I'd stopped inviting people over, stopped going out. The only thing that mattered was figuring out what was happening to me. I started researching online, searching for anyone else experiencing something similar. You'd be surprised how many people claim to find sand in strange places. But most of the stories were obviously fake. creepypasta nonsense, until I found a forum post from 3 years ago. Mediterranean sand in Nebraska apartment, no explanation, happens after 3 a.m. The user had deleted their account, but people had quoted parts of their posts in responses. The details matched mine exactly. The time, the sand composition, the sleepwalking. But the responses were what chilled me. Over a dozen people claiming similar experiences, all deleted accounts, all going silent after a few weeks of posting. I tried to track down these people, used every internet detective skill I had. Found a few real names, social media profiles, but they all went dark around the time of their posts. No updates, no activity, just gone. One name kept coming up in the discussions. Dr. Marina Petrova, a sleep researcher who had apparently been studying this phenomenon before she disappeared in 2019. I found some of her published papers. Dry academic stuff about sleep disorders, but her last paper, published just weeks before she vanished, was different. Anomalous mineral deposits in sleep-related incidents, a case study. Most of it was scientific jargon I couldn't understand, but the introduction made my blood run cold. In 97 documented cases across North America, subjects have reported finding beach sand of Mediterranean origin in their living spaces. With no explicable source, all subjects report the manifestation beginning at precisely 3:17 a.m. local time. What they don't report, perhaps because they don't remember, is where they go. The paper ended abruptly, like she'd been planning to write more but never got the chance. I dug deeper into Dr. Petrova's disappearance. She'd been working at a sleep clinic in Ohio. One day, she just didn't show up for work. Her apartment was empty except for, you guessed it, sand, lots of it. The police ruled it as a missing person case, but with no leads. It went cold that night. I decided to do something different. Instead of trying to stop the sleepwalking, I'd try to communicate with myself, whatever was controlling me. I left a notebook and pen on my kitchen counter. Wrote a message. What do you want? The next morning, I found a response, but it wasn't in my handwriting. The letters were strange, angular, and it was in a language I didn't recognize. I took a photo and ran it through every translation app I could find. Nothing. But then I noticed something. The sand patterns on my floor. They matched the writing. I spent hours comparing them, tracing the patterns, trying to decode it. And slowly, a pattern emerged. It wasn't a language exactly, more like coordinates, numbers hidden in the swirls and curves. When I finally decoded them, my heart nearly stopped. They were GPS coordinates for a beach in Greece, the exact spot where the sand composition matched. But there was more. A date, November 15th, just a week away, and a time, 3:17 a.m. I should have gone to the police, should have checked myself into a hospital, should have done literally anything other than what I did. But I booked a flight to Greece. I know how insane that sounds. But after weeks of this, I needed answers, and something deep inside me, deeper than logic or reason, knew that the answers were waiting on that beach. The flight was a blur. I don't even remember most of it. Just this growing sense of anticipation, dread, both. I landed in Athens on November 14th, rented a car and drove to the coordinates. It was a small beach near a tiny fishing village, the kind of place tourists don't know about, just white sand and blue water and a few weathered boats pulled up on shore. I checked into a small inn run by an elderly couple who spoke limited English. They looked at me strangely when I asked about the beach. "You don't go there at night," the woman said, her accent thick. "Never at night." "Why?" I asked. She just shook her head and crossed herself. That evening, I walked down to the beach. It was beautiful in that lonely way some places are. The sand, it was exactly the same as what had been appearing in my apartment. I knew it even before I bent down to touch it. As the sun set, I noticed something. Footprints, dozens of them, all leading from the village toward the water, but none leading back. I returned to my room and tried to sleep, but I was too wired, too anxious. I lay in bed watching the clock. 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 2:45. At 3:10, I gave up and walked back to the beach. I wasn't alone. There were others, maybe 20 people, standing at the water's edge, all in pajamas or nightclothes, all staring out at the dark water with those same empty eyes I'd seen in my videos. I recognized one of them. A woman from one of the forum posts I'd found. Her profile picture was distinctive. Purple hair and a nose ring. She'd posted about finding sand in her Portland apartment. "Hello?" I called out. No response. They just stood there, swaying slightly, like grass in a breeze. Then my phone buzzed. 3:17 a.m. The sleepwalkers began moving, walking forward into the water. Slow, steady steps. The waves lapped at their feet, then their knees, and I felt it, that pull, that irresistible urge to join them. My feet started moving without my permission. 1 step, 2, the water was warmer than it should have been, and as it touched my skin, I saw under the water, lights, not from boats or equipment, cities, entire cities beneath the waves, glowing with soft phosphorescence. And in those cities, movement, figures that weren't quite human. Haven't been human for a long time. The other sleepwalkers were walking deeper, up to their waists now, their faces peaceful, almost happy, and I understood they were going home. That's what the sand was. Not a curse, an invitation, a calling. You see, some of us, we don't belong up here. We're just visiting. Borrowed bodies living borrowed lives, but eventually, the ocean calls us back. Our real home, our real families. The memories flooded back, not my memories. Sarah Chen's memories. But the ones from before, from below, where time moves differently and the pressure of the deep keeps us safe from the burning sky. I was waist deep now. The others were swimming, diving, disappearing beneath the surface. And I wanted to follow. Every cell in my body screamed to dive down and never come up. But something held me back. A flash of my apartment, my photos on the wall, my parents at my college graduation, Jenna laughing at my terrible jokes, Sarah Chen's life, my life. I forced myself to step backward, fighting against every instinct. The water seemed to grab at me, trying to pull me back. 1 step, another, like moving through thick honey. I made it to the beach and ran like I've never run before. Back to the inn, into my car, driving like a madwoman to the airport. I caught the first flight out. I didn't care where it went. I'm back in Denver now. Different apartment, ground floor this time. And you know what? No sand. It's been a month, and there's been no sand. But sometimes, late at night, I hear them. The others who went into the water, they're calling to me, in whispers that sound like waves on shingle, in dreams that smell like salt and seaweed. They're telling me I can't run forever, that the ocean is patient, that one day, I'll find sand in my shoes again. And when I do, I'll know it's time to go home. So I'm telling you this story, putting it out there, because I need you to know, if you ever find sand where it shouldn't be, warm sand that smells like the sea, don't ignore it, don't sweep it away and pretend it's nothing. Check the time when it happens, and if it's 3:17 a.m., well, maybe it's time to ask yourself who you really are, and where you really belong. because the ocean remembers, even if we don't. And it always calls us home. Sweet dreams. Now, I need you to do something for me. Check your shoes. Right now, I'll wait. And if you find even a single grain of sand, leave a comment below. Tell me where you live. Tell me how far you are from the nearest ocean, because I'm starting to think there are more of us than I realized. More people caught between two worlds, and if you're one of them, if you've been finding sand in impossible places, maybe we need to talk. Before it's too late, before the next 3:17 a.m., share this story. Someone you know might need to hear it, might need to know they're not going crazy, that they're not alone. And subscribe, because if I disappear, if this channel goes dark, you'll know where I've gone. And maybe, just maybe, you'll know to check the beaches of Greece. Just don't go in the water, unless you're ready to remember who you really are. Story number 3. They found her running shoes first, just the shoes, nothing else. Perfectly placed side by side on the asphalt, laces still tied as if Sarah Mitchell had simply stepped out of them mid-stride. The thing that haunts me most, there wasn't a single footprint leading away from them. Not one. And I should know, because I was running right behind her when she vanished. Before I tell you what really happened at mile 13 of the Boston Marathon last October, I need you to understand something. What I'm about to share isn't some urban legend or creepypasta nonsense. This happened, and if you're planning to run any marathons this year, you might want to listen carefully, because whatever took Sarah that day, it's still out there, waiting. Now, let me tell you the story. My name is Jamie Chen, and I've been running marathons for 12 years. I've completed 26 of them. Well, 25 and a half if we're being technical. That October morning in Boston started like any other race day. The air was crisp, around 48 degrees, perfect running weather. I remember standing in Coral B doing my usual pre-race stretches when I first noticed Sarah. She was hard to miss. Bright orange running vest, number 1847 pinned to her chest, and these neon yellow shoes that practically glowed in the early morning light. But it wasn't her outfit that caught my attention. It was the way she kept checking her watch, not her running watch. A different one on her other wrist, an old-fashioned analog thing that looked completely out of place. "First marathon?" I asked, trying to be friendly. Marathon runners. We're usually a chatty bunch before races. She turned to me, and I'll never forget the look in her eyes. They were green, but not a normal green. They had these gold flecks that seemed to shift in the light. "No," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "My 13th. 13. I should have paid more attention to that number. The gun went off at 9:02 a.m. I remember because my GPS watch synced perfectly with the official race clock. The first few miles were typical Boston Marathon chaos. Thousands of feet hitting pavement, spectators cheering, cowbells ringing. I settled into my pace, planning for a 3:45 finish. Sarah ended up running near me. Not together exactly, but in that way runners sometimes sync up without meaning to. Mile 3, mile 5, mile 8. Everything felt normal. Better than normal, actually. I was hitting my splits perfectly. The weather stayed cool, the crowds were incredible, especially through Wellesley. But something was off. I kept noticing things that didn't quite fit. There was a man in a gray suit standing perfectly still among the cheering crowds at mile 7. While everyone else jumped and waved signs, he just stood there, watching. When I glanced back 30 seconds later, he was gone. But at mile 9, there he was again. Same suit, same stillness, same watching. Sarah noticed him too. I saw her stumble slightly when she spotted him, her perfect form breaking for just a moment. She sped up after that, and I found myself matching her pace without really deciding to. Mile 10 brought the first real sign that something was wrong. We were running through Natick when I heard it, this low, humming sound. Not from the crowd or the other runners. It was coming from underneath, from the road itself. A vibration I could feel through my shoes with each step. "Do you hear that?" I called out to Sarah. She glanced at me and her face was pale despite the exertion. "You hear it too?" Her relief was obvious, and somehow that made it worse. If we were both hearing it, it wasn't just race day hallucinations. The humming grew louder as we approached mile 11. Other runners seemed oblivious, laughing, chatting, focused on their own races. But Sarah and I, we knew something was happening. The man in gray appeared twice more, always perfectly still, always watching. And now there were others. A woman in a vintage dress from maybe the 1950s. A teenager in clothes that looked even older. All of them motionless among the moving crowd. All of them watching us. Or rather, watching Sarah. Mile 12 was when the temperature dropped. Not gradually, but all at once, like running into an invisible wall of cold. My breath came out in visible puffs. Frost formed on my water bottle. Other runners were still sweating in the autumn warmth, but Sarah and I were running through winter. "What's happening?" I gasped, my lungs burning from the sudden cold. Sarah's analog watch was spinning, the hands whipping around the face in impossible circles. "They found me," she whispered. I thought 13 would be different. I thought if I ran it with enough people around." "Who found you? What are you talking about?" But we were approaching mile 13, and Sarah was slowing down. Not from exhaustion, from fear. Pure, radiating terror that I could feel coming off her in waves. Mile marker 13 came into view. Just another banner stretched across the road. 13.1, halfway there, in bold letters. The crowd was thick here. Spectators packed 5 deep on both sides. Perfect autumn sunshine everywhere, except for the circle of gray sky directly above the marker. A perfect circle of storm clouds in an otherwise clear day. Sarah stopped running entirely about 50 feet from the marker. Just stopped. Runners streamed around us, some muttering annoyance, but I stopped too. Something in her face. I couldn't leave her. "Sarah, what's wrong? Are you hurt?" She was staring at the mile marker like it was a guillotine. "Every 13, she said, her voice shaking. "Every 13th marathon they come for one of us. It's been happening for decades, but nobody remembers. Nobody talks about it. The races, they just continue like nothing happened." "Who comes? What are you talking about?" "The collectors." She grabbed my arm, her fingers ice cold through my shirt. "Listen to me. Whatever happens, don't follow. Don't look for me. Just keep running. Promise me." "Sarah, you're scaring me. Let's find a medical tent." But the humming had become a roar. The ground beneath our feet was vibrating so hard I could feel it in my teeth. And the spectators. God, the spectators. They were still cheering, still waving their signs, but their faces were wrong. Smiles too wide, eyes that didn't blink, moving in perfect synchronization like puppets on the same string. The man in gray was there, standing directly under the mile marker. He wasn't alone anymore. Dozens of them, all in different eras of clothing, all perfectly still, all watching Sarah with those unblinking eyes. "I'm sorry," Sarah whispered. I thought if I found someone who could see them too, maybe it would be different. She took a step toward the marker, then another. I tried to follow, but my feet wouldn't move. It was like the asphalt had turned to tar, holding me in place. I could only watch as Sarah walked forward, each step seeming to take enormous effort. The collectors began to move, gliding more than walking, converging on the mile marker from all directions. The real spectators couldn't see them, kept cheering, kept ringing their cowbells, completely oblivious to the horror unfolding. Sarah reached the marker and turned back to look at me one last time. "Find the others," she said. "Warn them about the 13th. Then she took one more step and disappeared. Not gradually, not in a flash of light or puff of smoke. She was there, and then she wasn't. The only thing left was her shoes, sitting perfectly aligned on the white line of the mile marker. The collectors vanished too, melting back into the crowd, which kept cheering as if nothing had happened. The gray circle in the sky dissolved, the humming stopped, the cold dissipated. Everything returned to normal. Except Sarah was gone, and I was standing there, unable to move, staring at a pair of empty running shoes. A race official approached me. "Miss, are you all right? Do you need medical assistance?" I pointed at the shoes. Sarah, she was just... He looked where I was pointing and frowned. "What shoes?" "Miss, you need to keep moving or step off the course." The shoes were gone. The asphalt was bare. Just the white-painted line of mile 13. Around me, hundreds of runners continued past, their feet hitting the exact spot where Sarah had vanished, and not one of them noticed anything wrong. I started running again. What else could I do? But I was no longer racing, I was fleeing. Every step past mile 13 felt like escape, like I was running from something that had marked me, noticed me, cataloged me for future collection. I didn't finish the marathon. At mile 15, I veered off course and collapsed in a Dunkin' Donuts, shaking and crying while concerned staff brought me water and called for help. The EMTs said it was dehydration, exhaustion, maybe a panic attack. I didn't argue. How could I tell them the truth? But I couldn't let it go. Sarah Mitchell had vanished in front of me, and nobody else seemed to remember she existed. I started with the race records. Sarah Mitchell, bib number 1847, was registered for the race. Her chip had recorded splits through mile 12, then nothing. Race officials listed her as DNF, did not finish. Common enough in marathons. Nothing suspicious about it. Except, I couldn't find any other record of Sarah Mitchell. No social media, no running club memberships, no results from her previous 12 marathons. It was like she had existed only for that single morning, created just to disappear at mile 13. I spent weeks digging through old race results, looking for patterns, and that's when I found them. The gaps. Every major marathon going back decades had DNFs at mile 13. Not many, usually just 1 or 2 per race, but always at 13. Always runners whose names appeared nowhere else in any database. The Boston Public Library had newspaper archives going back to the 1920s. I spent entire days there searching through microfilm until my eyes burned, and I found it. A pattern hidden in plain sight. 1923, runner collapses at halfway mark, body never recovered. 1936, mysterious athlete disappears during race. 1949, marathon marred by unexplained absence. 1962, where is Margaret Thorne? Runner vanishes without a trace. Every 13 years, always at mile 13. Always during a major marathon with thousands of witnesses who somehow saw nothing. I started reaching out to other runners, especially those who'd been in the sport for decades. Most thought I was crazy, but a precious few, remembered things. Strange moments during races. Runners who were there one moment and gone the next. Voices in the crowd that didn't belong. Cold spots on warm days. An older runner named Chuck, who'd completed over 100 marathons, met me for coffee in Cambridge. He listened to my story without interrupting, then sat quietly for a long moment. "My wife," he finally said. "She was supposed to run Boston with me in 1998. We trained together for months. Race day came. I lost her in the crowd at the start, figured we'd meet at the finish." He pulled out a worn photo. A woman in 90s running gear smiling at the camera. She never finished, never came home. Police said she must have left me. started a new life somewhere but her shoes. His voice cracked. I found her shoes at home that night, the one she was wearing in the race, sitting by our front door like she'd just stepped out of them. He wasn't the only one. A running club in Chicago had a memorial wall for lost members. 5 names, all disappeared during races over the past 60 years. A race director in New York mentioned the cursed corral, how they'd stopped using number 13 for their wave starts after too many incidents. But it was a librarian in Salem who gave me the piece that made everything click. She was a runner herself, and when I mentioned my research, she disappeared into the archives and came back with a box of documents from the 1690s. Not marathon-related, she said, but you might find this interesting. It was a collection of testimonies from the witch trials, but not the famous ones. These were accounts that had been sealed, deemed too fantastical even for a time when people believed in spectral evidence. Multiple witnesses describing people who vanished while walking, always at the 13th mile marker on the old postal roads, always leaving behind just their shoes. The collectors, one testimony read, come for those who run from their fate. 13 miles they allow, then collection is due. I've run 12 marathons since that day in Boston, never a 13th. I stop at mile 12 every single time. Call me crazy, call me superstitious, but I know what I saw. And now I know what Sarah meant when she said to warn the others. But let me tell you about marathon number 12, the one that nearly broke me. The one where I learned the collectors don't always wait for 13. It was the Chicago Marathon last October. A full year after Sarah vanished, I'd been careful, so careful, registered under a slightly different name, wore different gear, even changed my running form to blend in better with the crowd. I thought I was safe as long as I stopped at 12. I was wrong. The morning started with fog. Thick, unnatural fog that shouldn't exist in downtown Chicago in October. My hotel was only 3 blocks from the start line, but I got lost twice trying to find it. Streets I'd walked the day before seemed to curve in different directions. Buildings appeared where empty lots had been, and in the fog, shapes. Moving shapes that weren't quite human, weren't quite anything. At the expo the day before, while picking up my bib, the volunteer had paused when she handed it to me. 12, she'd said, looking at something on her computer screen I couldn't see. This is your 12th, isn't it? How did you... But she was already looking past me to the next runner, her face blank like the conversation had never happened. My bib number? 1313. I'd tried to exchange it, but they said the system was locked. No changes possible. Race morning, I stood in my corral surrounded by thousands of runners. But I felt utterly alone. The fog made everyone look like ghosts. Pale shapes that materialized and vanished as they moved. And among them, the still ones. More than I'd ever seen before. Men and women in running gear from every decade since marathons began. All watching, all waiting. A runner beside me, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes, noticed my shaking hands. "First Chicago?" she asked. "12th marathon," I said without thinking. Her face changed, just for a moment. Something flickered behind her eyes. "12's a good number," she said carefully. "Some say it's best to stop at 12. "Do you know?" I whispered. "Do you know about 13? She glanced around nervously, then leaned closer. "My daughter. 5 years ago. She was doing her 13th in Berlin. Called me at mile 12. Said she felt strange. Said there were people in old-fashioned running clothes just standing in the crowd. That was the last time." Her voice broke. "They found her chip at mile 13, just the chip, still attached to her shoe." Before I could respond, the gun went off. The woman disappeared into the surge of runners, and I never saw her again. But her words echoed with each step. Just the chip, still attached to her shoe. The first 12 miles of Chicago were torture. Not physically, I was in the best shape of my life, but mentally, every mile marker felt like a countdown. Every spectator could be a collector. Every shadow in the fog could be Sarah, trying to warn me or welcome me. At mile 10, I started seeing the shoes, just glimpses at first. A pair abandoned on the sidewalk, another set hanging from a lamppost, then more. Dozens of them, all different styles and sizes, all from different eras. Running shoes from the 1970s with their minimal soles, modern carbon-plated racers, canvas sneakers that predated the running boom, all empty, all perfectly placed like their owners had simply stepped out of them. Other runners didn't see them. They ran right through spaces where I had to dodge around phantom footwear, and I realized these weren't just any shoes. These were the shoes of the collected. Every pair that had been left behind at mile 13 over the decades, somehow bleeding through into our world as I approached my 12th finish. At mile 11, the fog thickened impossibly. I could barely see 10 feet ahead. The runners around me became vague shapes, their footfalls muffled like we were running through cotton. And in that supernatural quiet I heard it, the sound that still wakes me at night. Footsteps, hundreds of them, running in perfect synchronization but not on our course. They were running parallel to us, beside us, on roads that didn't exist in the real Chicago. The collected, running their eternal race. I could hear Sarah's voice among them, counting off pace. 6:30, 6:31, 6:32. The exact pace we'd been running when she vanished. Mile 12 approached like a wall. I'd planned my exit perfectly. There was a medical tent just past the marker where I could stop, claim cramps or dizziness, get a DNF that wouldn't raise questions. 12 marathons completed, safe. But as I approached the marker, I saw him. The man in gray from Boston, standing directly in my path. Not at 13, at 12. The rules had changed. Or maybe they'd never been what I thought. "You can't stop at 12 anymore," he said, and his voice was like wind through empty streets. "You've seen too much, know too much. The collection must be complete." I tried to veer around him, but he was everywhere. Every gap between runners filled with gray suits and watching eyes. The medical tent was right there, 20 feet away, but it might as well have been on the moon. "Run through," a voice whispered beside me. Sarah's voice. I turned, and for just a moment, I saw her, translucent, like she was running in two worlds at once. "Don't stop. Run through 12. But at 13? At 13, you choose. Choose what? Whether to step out of your shoes or keep running forever." The man in gray reached for me, and I did the only thing I could. I ran, straight through him, and it was like running through winter. Ice in my lungs, frost on my skin, my legs going numb with cold. But I burst through to the other side past mile 12, still running when every plane said I should stop. The fog lifted instantly. Chicago returned, bright sunshine, cheering crowds, the normal chaos of a big city marathon. But I knew it was an illusion. A temporary reprieve. Mile 13 was coming, and this time I couldn't stop. The half mile between 12 and 13 was the longest of my life. Each step felt like a choice. Keep going toward certain doom, or stop and face whatever punishment the collectors had for those who broke the rules. Around me, thousands of runners continued their race, oblivious to my private nightmare. But I wasn't alone. As I ran, I began to notice others. Runners whose eyes held the same haunted recognition. A man in his 70s who kept glancing over his shoulder. A young woman who ran with her hand clutched around something at her neck. A pendant, maybe, or a charm against the collectors. We didn't speak, but we saw each other. The marked ones approaching our fate. At mile 1, 2.5, the temperature dropped again. Not as dramatically as in Boston, but enough to make me shiver despite the exertion. My breath came out in small puffs, and I noticed frost forming on the barriers beside the course. The crowd's cheers became muffled, like someone was slowly turning down the volume on the world. Then I saw them, the collected. They were running on a road that existed in the same space as ours, but shifted, like looking at a double exposure photograph. Their road was older, cobblestones instead of asphalt, gas lamps instead of modern streetlights, and they ran in perfect formation. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all at the exact same pace, all with the exact same expression of resigned determination. Sarah was in the third row, still in her orange vest from Boston, though it looked faded now, like clothes left too long in the sun. She turned her head as I passed, and our eyes met across the divide between worlds. "Jews," she mouthed. Just that one word. Mile 13 loomed ahead. The banner stretched across the road, cheerful and normal to everyone else. But I could see what lay beneath. A shimmering curtain between worlds, thin as tissue paper, the place where reality grew soft and the collectors did their work. 20 feet from the marker, my legs suddenly stopped working. Not tired, frozen. Like in those nightmares where you try to run but can't move. I stumbled, caught myself, tried to push forward. Other runners flowed around me like water around a stone. "Your choice," the man in gray said, appearing beside me as if he'd always been there. "Step out of your shoes and join them willingly, or be taken like the rest." "What are you?" I gasped, fighting against the paralysis. "Why do you do this?" For the first time, his expression changed. Something almost like sadness crossed his features. "We don't do anything. We simply are. Every system needs its monitors, its maintainers. When humans began to run in organized groups, covering distances that should have taken days and mere hours, you created us. The need for balance created us. Balance. 26.2 miles was never meant to be conquered so easily. The human body rebels at 20, the human spirit at 13. We collect those who push too far, too fast, those who run from life instead of toward it, those who seek escape in the rhythm of their feet and the burning in their lungs. That's insane. Is it? How many runners have you met who speak of their addiction, who can't stop even when their bodies beg for mercy, who run from failed marriages, dead-end jobs, inner demons that pace them step for step? We don't choose who to collect. You mark yourselves with every mile logged in desperation instead of joy. I thought of my own running history, started after my divorce, increased after my father's death. Marathon after marathon, each one an escape from a life I couldn't face. Was he right? Had I been running toward this moment all along? The paralysis broke, and I stumbled forward. 3 steps to mile 13. 2, 1. I stood at the threshold, 1 foot on either side of the marker. The world split around me. Chicago on one side, that strange twilight road on the other. I could see both clearly now. The collected weren't prisoners. They were still running, always running, but on roads that went everywhere and nowhere, through cities that had been and might be, past finish lines that never came. "Choose," Sarah said again. And now I could hear her clearly. Some of us chose to step out, some were taken, but we all run now, forever. It's not hell, but it's not life either. It's the space between heartbeats, the pause between breaths. We exist in the effort, never the achievement. I looked down at my shoes. Bright blue Nikes, worn at the heels from hundreds of training miles. All it would take was stepping out of them, leaving them on the line like Sarah had, like thousands before us. "What happens if I keep running?" I asked. "If I cross 13 and keep going?" The man in gray tilted his head. "No one has ever tried. The marked ones always choose one way or the other. 13 miles. The halfway point of a marathon. The place where the body starts to rebel, where glycogen depletes, where the real race begins. I'd stopped here 12 times out of fear, but what if... I lifted my back foot, brought it forward, crossed fully into mile 13, and kept running. The world exploded into sensation. Both realities crashed together. Chicago and the twilight road, the cheering crowds and the silent, collected sunshine and eternal dusk. I was running in both places at once, my body screaming from the strain of existing in two worlds. But I kept running. The collectors walked beside me, no longer trying to stop me. They seemed curious. This wasn't how the script went. The marked ones chose. They didn't continue. Mile 14 came faster than it should have. My GPS watch showed impossible numbers, paces that fluctuated between world record speed and barely moving. Time itself seemed confused by my dual existence. In Chicago, I was just another runner. On the twilight road, I was an anomaly, a story the collected would tell each other as they ran their eternal race. By mile 15, the strain was too much. I couldn't maintain the balance between worlds. I had to choose, not between running and stopping, but between which road to follow. The safe, sunny streets of Chicago, where I could finish the race and go home and pretend none of this had happened, or the twilight road where answers waited, but return seemed impossible. That's when I saw her. Not Sarah, someone new, a child, maybe 10 years old, in modern running gear. She wasn't collected, she was like me, running in both worlds, tears streaming down her face. "Help me," she gasped as I caught up to her. "I was just doing the kids' fun run, I didn't mean to. I got lost and ended up at 13 and now I can't." A child. They were taking children now, that decided it. I grabbed her hand and pulled her towards Chicago's reality. The collectors didn't try to stop us. If anything, they seemed to step back, creating a path. Maybe there were rules even they had to follow. Maybe children were never meant to be part of the collection. We burst fully into Chicago at mile 16, both of us gasping, stumbling, but alive, and in one world instead of two. The girl's mother appeared from nowhere, crying with relief, saying she'd been looking everywhere, that her daughter had vanished from the kids' race and somehow ended up on the marathon course. I finished that marathon, ran all 26.2 miles, through leg cramps and exhaustion and the weird looks from other runners who'd seen me stumble and weave and grab a random child. My official time was impossible. Somehow, both slower and faster than it should have been, like the timing mats couldn't quite figure out which version of me had crossed them. But I finished. 13 didn't stop me. And that, I learned, changed everything. The collectors aren't just at Boston or Chicago, they're at every marathon, waiting at mile 13 for the unlucky few who match whatever criteria they use for selection. Maybe it's runners who've glimpsed them before. Maybe it's those who run from something in their lives. Maybe it's just random, a cosmic lottery where the prize is disappearance. But now I know something else. They can be defied. Not easily, not without cost, but it's possible. The rules that govern them are older than marathons, older than organized running. They're the rules of challenge and choice, of human will against supernatural force, and sometimes the human wins. I've tried to warn people, started a blog, a podcast, even printed flyers to hand out at race expos. Most people laugh, some get angry, but occasionally someone's eyes widen with recognition. Someone remembers a friend who vanished. Someone has their own story of the mile that felt wrong. Last month, I got an email that chilled me to the bone. No subject line, no signature, just a single paragraph. "Thank you for remembering. We are the 13. We are the collected. We run still, in places between the miles, on roads that exist outside your marathons. Sarah says hello. She says you were brave to stop at 12. She says the collectors are patient, but not infinitely so. Your 13th awaits. Attached was a photo, blurry, like it was taken while moving, but I could make out the figures. Dozens of runners in gear from different decades, all running on a road that seemed to exist in perpetual twilight. In the front, clearly visible despite the blur, was Sarah, still in her orange vest, still wearing that analog watch, still running. I've made my peace with never running another full marathon. 12 is enough, 12 is safe, but sometimes, usually at 3 in the morning when sleep won't come, I wonder what would happen if I crossed that line. Would I vanish like Sarah? Would I join the eternal race on those twilight roads? Or would nothing happen at all, proving I've spent years afraid of shadows and coincidence? The Boston Marathon is coming up again. I have my bib, number 4782, ready to go. I tell myself I'll stop at 12 like always. But lately, I've been having dreams. Dreams of Sarah running beside me, checking that strange watch, counting down to something I can't quite understand. 1 more mile, she says in the dreams. Just 1 more mile, and you'll understand everything. I wake up with my running shoes on, laced and ready, though I know I went to bed barefoot. The collectors are patient, but not infinitely so. If you're reading this after April 15th and I haven't posted again, check the race results. Look for DNFs at mile 13. Look for shoes left behind, and whatever you do, count your marathons carefully, because on your 13th, they'll be waiting. Some things shouldn't be found. Some miles shouldn't be run. And some mysteries. Some mysteries are meant to keep us running forever, but here's the thing that terrifies me most. The thing I haven't told anyone until now. Last week, I found a pair of running shoes on my doorstep. Neon yellow, size 7.5. Sarah's shoes. The ones that vanished with her at mile 13. Inside the left shoe was a note, written in handwriting I'd seen on her race bib. Your turn is coming. The 13th mile remembers all who witness. Stop running from your fate, or run forever with us. So, I ask you, if you've made it this far, if you've heard this whole story, what would you do? Would you face your 13th? Would you keep running? Or would you spend the rest of your life wondering what waits at the mile marker you'll never cross? Let me know in the comments, while I still can, while I'm still here to read them, while I'm still on this side of mile 13, because my running shoes are calling, and I don't know how much longer I can resist. Sweet dreams, and may all your races end at 12. But wait, before you go, before you click away thinking this story is over, I need to tell you what happened last week, because the collectors, it turns out, don't like to lose. I was at my local running store picking up new shoes for training. Just a normal Tuesday evening. The clerk was a young guy, maybe 19, enthusiastic about compression socks and energy gels. I was half listening to his sales pitch when I noticed the wall behind him. Photos of local runners at various races. Typical running store decoration. Except, in every single photo, at the edge of the frame, barely visible, there they were, the still ones, the watchers in gray, in every photo. Nice pictures, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The clerk's smile faltered for just a moment. Yeah, we've been meaning to take those down. They're all from the same race photographer, and he disappeared last year, during a marathon actually, mile 13. Weird, right? My blood went cold. Did he leave anything behind? Just his camera, still had film in it. Who uses film anymore, right? But when we developed it, he glanced around, then leaned closer. Look, this is going to sound crazy, but the picture showed 2 races happening at once, like overlapped or something. Our race, and then this other one with runners in really old gear. Management said it was just double exposure, but you don't think so? He shook his head. My grandmother ran marathons in the 60s. I showed her one of the photos and she went white, pointed to one of the old-time runners and said, That's Margaret Thorne. She was my training partner. She disappeared in 1962. Margaret Thorne. I remembered that name from my research. Boston Globe, 1962. Where is Margaret Thorne? Runner vanishes without a trace. Can I see them? I asked. The photos? He hesitated, then ducked into the back room. Came out with a manila envelope marked, "Do not display," in red ink. Inside were dozens of photographs, all showing that terrible double exposure. Our world and theirs, overlapping at the edges. But it was the last photo that made me drop the envelope. It was me, at the Chicago Marathon, standing at mile 13, 1 foot in each world. But that wasn't the horrible part. The horrible part was what the photo showed that I hadn't seen at the time. Behind me, stretching back as far as the image captured, was a line of runners. Not the collected, new ones. Living runners who had been marked, who would face their choice at 13. The photo had been taken last October, but I recognized some of them from recent race results. Local runners who'd all DNF'd at major marathons in the past few months. All at mile 13, and at the very back of the line, barely visible but unmistakable, was the store clerk, the young man standing in front of me, still smiling, still holding the photos. "I'm running my first marathon next month," he said brightly. "Boston. I'm so excited. It'll be my 13th race of any kind. Started with 5Ks, worked up through halves. 13 races to prepare for the big one. Lucky number 13, right?" I wanted to warn him. Wanted to grab him by the shoulders and tell him to stop at 12 races, 12 miles, 12 of anything. But when I opened my mouth, no words came out. The collector's rule, maybe, or my own cowardice, or the terrible knowledge that warning him might just mark him faster. I bought my shoes and left. But I've been thinking about that clerk every day since, checking the Boston Marathon tracking app obsessively, waiting to see if he makes it past 13. Because here's what I've learned in all my research, all my running, all my close calls with the collectors. We're all marked, every one of us who runs. Not by them, by ourselves. By the need to escape, to push harder, to find something at the end of those 26.2 miles that we can't find in regular life. The collectors don't create the urge, they just harvest it. And now, as I lie here in bed at 3 a.m., typing this on my phone because sleep won't come, I can hear them, footsteps on the street outside, the steady rhythm of runners in the dark. But when I look out my window, the street is empty. Just the sound of feet on asphalt that isn't there. Runners on roads that don't exist. They're not just at races anymore. They're everywhere. Waiting, watching, collecting. My GPS watch sits on my nightstand, fully charged. My shoes are by the door, laced and ready. And that note from Sarah. I've read it so many times the paper is soft with wear. Your turn is coming. The 13th mile remembers all who witness. Tomorrow is the anniversary. 1 year exactly since Chicago, since I defied them and ran through 13. I've been feeling the pull all week. The need to lace up, to run, to find out what happens when you challenge the collectors and win. Or did I win? Maybe continuing past 13 wasn't defiance. Maybe it was exactly what they wanted. Maybe the real collection isn't taking our bodies. It's taking our peace, making us run forever, even when we're standing still, always looking over our shoulders for the gray man and his patient smile. I can hear Sarah's voice in the wind tonight, counting pace, 6:30, 6:31, 6:32, the exact pace I'll need to qualify for Boston next year, the race where it all started, the race where maybe it needs to end. So, I'll ask you one more time, and please, I need to know I'm not alone in this. Have you seen them? The still ones at races? The runners who vanish? The shoes left behind? Have you felt that cold at mile 13? Heard that humming from beneath the road? Seen the world split into two paths? Comment below. Share your stories. Tell me I'm not crazy, or tell me I am. I'll take either at this point. Just remember to count your miles, count your races, and when you hit 12 of anything, maybe consider stopping, because the 13th is always waiting, and the collectors are patient, but not infinitely so. Update. It's 4 a.m. now. I just heard my front door open. My shoes are gone, but I can hear them running down the street, keeping perfect pace, waiting for me to follow. The chase isn't over. It's just beginning. If you're reading this, check on that store clerk after Boston. His name is Marcus. Bib number 1313. And if he doesn't finish, if he vanishes at 13, you'll know the collectors are still feeding, still taking those who run too far, too fast, looking for something they'll never find, unless they run forever. Story number 4. The first time I noticed the nail, I was hanging a picture of my grandmother in the hallway. My hammer missed its mark, and the frame crashed to the floor. Glass everywhere. As I knelt to clean up the mess, that's when I saw it. One nail in the baseboard, pointing the wrong way. Not just crooked, wrong. Every other nail in that hallway, hell, every nail I'd checked in my entire house since then, they all point north, perfectly aligned, like tiny metal compasses frozen in wood, except for that one nail pointing southeast. If you think that's strange, just wait, because what I found when I tried to pull that nail out, well, that's why I haven't slept in 3 days. That's why I'm telling you this story now, while I still can. Before you call me crazy, go check, right now. Pause this video and look at the nails in your walls. I'll wait. Did you check? Good. Now you know I'm not lying. They all point the same direction, don't they? North, always north. It's one of those things nobody notices until someone points it out. Like how you're now aware of your breathing, or how your tongue doesn't quite fit comfortably in your mouth. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how this all started. Properly. Because you need to understand, this isn't just about a nail. This is about what happens when you notice something you weren't supposed to notice. The story begins now. My name is David Chen, and I bought the house on Willow Street in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, last October. It was one of those century-old Victorians that real estate agents call full of character, which usually means full of problems. But the price was right, and after my divorce, I needed a fresh start. The house had good bones, original hardwood floors that creaked in all the right places, crown molding that they don't make anymore, and this peculiar smell, like vanilla and old books. Comforting. The kind of smell that makes you want to curl up with hot chocolate and fall asleep. I'd been living there for 6 months when the incident with grandmother's picture happened. After cleaning up the glass, I sat on the floor staring at that weird nail. It bothered me more than it should have. See, I'm an engineer by trade. Patterns are my life. When something breaks a pattern, I notice. I got my phone flashlight and looked closer. The nail wasn't just pointing southeast, it was pristine. No rust, no paint. Like it had been hammered in yesterday, even though the baseboard had probably 12 layers of paint over decades. Probably just a repair, I muttered, but my engineer brain wouldn't let it go. I spent the next hour checking every visible nail in my house. Kitchen cabinets, north. Bedroom baseboards, north. Even the ancient nails in the basement ceiling joists. All pointing north. How was that even possible? When you hammer a nail, it goes in randomly. The slot direction is pure chance. Unless someone did it on purpose. That night, I had the first dream. I was in my hallway, but it stretched on forever. Thousands of nails in the walls, all perfectly aligned, their slots like tiny eyes watching me. And at the very end of that infinite hallway, one nail, pointing the wrong way, pulsing with a dull red light. I woke up at 3:17 a.m. Don't know why I remember the exact time, but I do. My mouth was dry. heart racing, and I could swear I heard hammering coming from inside the walls. Thud, 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 rhythmic, deliberate. I grabbed my baseball bat. Yeah, I know, cliché, and crept into the hallway. The sound stopped the moment my foot hit the floorboard. But something was different. The air felt charged, like before a thunderstorm. I flicked on the light, the nail, the wrong pointing nail. It had moved. Not much, maybe a quarter inch, but it was definitely further out than before. Like something had pushed it from behind. Old house, I told myself. Wood expands and contracts, but I knew that was bull. I touched the nail with my finger, and I swear to God, it was warm. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. How could I? By morning, I'd convinced myself I'd imagined it. Stress from the divorce. New house jitters. Whatever. But I couldn't stop thinking about those nails. I called in sick to work, first time in 5 years, and drove to the Cedar Rapids Public Library. If someone had deliberately aligned every nail in my house, there had to be a reason. Maybe the previous owner was just eccentric. The librarian, Mrs. Patterson, had that look librarians get when you ask about local history. Half excited, half concerned. She led me to the archives. "Which house on Willow?" she asked. 1247. Her face did this thing, just for a second, like when you bite into something sour. "The Brennan house," she said quietly. "You bought the Brennan house." Turns out, my beautiful Victorian had history. Built in 1898 by a man named Ezekiel Brennan. He was what they called a magnetic healer back then. Basically, a con artist who claimed magnets could cure everything from consumption to heartbreak. But here's where it gets interesting. Brennan wasn't just obsessed with magnets. He was obsessed with magnetic fields. Earth's magnetic field, specifically. He filled journals with theories about magnetic alignment and human consciousness. The town thought he was harmless until his wife Margaret disappeared in 1901. They found her 3 weeks later, in the walls. She'd been placed there, carefully, precisely, and according to the police report, she was surrounded by hundreds of iron nails, all pointing north. Except one. My hands shook as I read that part. The report was fuzzy on details. They always are when things get too strange. But one line stood out. One nail, located at the base of the eastern wall, pointed anomalously southeast. Unable to remove. Unable to remove. I photocopied everything and drove home in a daze. The logical part of my brain kept saying coincidence. Old houses have old stories. But when I pulled into my driveway, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Mrs. Chen from next door, no relation, despite the name, was standing on my porch. She had her hand on my front door, and she was swaying, back and forth, like a metronome. "Mrs. Chen?" I called out. She turned, and her eyes were vacant, unfocused. She blinked slowly, like she was waking up. "Oh, David, She looked confused. "I don't know why I'm here. I was making lunch, and then..." She shook her head. "Strange. I'm sorry." She shuffled back to her house, but I saw her glance back 3 times. Each time, her gaze went to the exact spot where I knew that wrong-pointing nail was, behind the wall, hidden. That night, I set up my laptop to record the hallway. If the nail was moving, I'd have proof. I wasn't crazy. Something was happening in this house, and I was going to figure out what. At 3:17 a.m., I woke up again. Not from a dream, this time. From a sound. Voices. Whispering. Coming from inside the walls. I couldn't make out words, but the tone was urgent. Desperate. Like someone trying to warn me about something. I grabbed my laptop and checked the recording. What I saw made me want to pack my bags and leave right then. The nail hadn't just moved. For exactly 17 minutes, starting at 2:42 a.m., it had been spinning. Slowly. Deliberately. like a compass needle searching for north but being pulled by something stronger. And in the reflection on the hallway mirror, I could swear I saw a shadow, human-shaped, pressed against the inside of the wall. I didn't run. Maybe I should have. But engineers don't run from problems. We solve them. And this was just a problem, right? Weird magnetic fields. Some kind of electrical interference. There had to be a logical explanation. I bought every tool I could think of. EMF detector, thermal camera, even one of those stupid ghost hunting apps, though I felt ridiculous downloading it. Over the next 3 days, I mapped every nail in my house. 247 total, 246 pointing north, and 1 pointing southeast, always southeast. Exactly 142 degrees from magnetic north. The EMF detector went crazy near that nail. The thermal camera showed it was consistently 5 degrees warmer than the surrounding wood. And the ghost app, well, it crashed every time I pointed it at that section of wall. But the really strange thing? The pattern. See, the other nails weren't just pointing north randomly. When I mapped them out, they formed a shape, like a spider web with every strand leading to that one nail. It was a focus point, a center. Like Brennan had built the entire house around that single piece of metal. I had to know what was behind that wall. I waited until Saturday, didn't want the neighbors to hear, and got my sledgehammer. The wallpaper came off easy. The plaster underneath was older, original to the house, and when I swung that hammer, the wall didn't break, it opened like a mouth. Behind the plaster was a space about 3 feet deep, and it was full of letters, hundreds of them, all addressed to Margaret Brennan, all unopened, all dated after her death. My hands shook as I pulled them out. The first one was dated just a week after they found her body. My dearest Margaret, the alignment is holding. Your sacrifice was not in vain. The northern points keep you stable, but the southeastern anchor, it pulls, always pulls. I can hear you at night trying to break free. Please understand, my love. This is the only way to keep you safe, to keep everyone safe. Forever yours, Ezekiel. Letter after letter, year after year. Ezekiel wrote to his dead wife every week for 43 years, and in each one, the message was the same. The nails keep you here. The pattern holds you in place. The southeastern nail is the key. But the last letter, dated just 3 days before Ezekiel's own death in 1944, that one was different. Margaret, I'm old now, tired. The house fights me every day. It wants to let you go, but I can't. I won't. You don't understand what you became in those final moments. What you were turning into, the magnetic field of human consciousness when properly aligned at the moment of death. It doesn't dissipate, it transforms. The others don't know, they think you're gone. But I hear you every night at 3:17. I feel you pulling at that anchor nail, growing stronger. I'm sorry, my love, but the seal must hold. If someone finds these letters, if someone disturbs the pattern, God help them, and God help the world. The nail must never be removed, E.B. I sat in that hollowed-out wall space surrounded by decades of madness and realized I'd made a terrible mistake. The wall was open now, the pattern was broken, and somewhere in the house something shifted. That night I tried to fix the wall, tried to put everything back, but it was like trying to reconstruct a broken egg. The letters scattered every time I stacked them. The plaster wouldn't hold. And that nail, that damned nail, it had started to vibrate, not enough to see, but I could feel it when I touched the wall. A low thrumming, like a tuning fork struck in another room. I considered calling someone, but who? The cops? Hello, officer, I found some weird letters and a warm nail, a priest. I wasn't religious, and besides, Ezekiel's letters made it clear this wasn't about demons or spirits. This was something else, something that lived in the space between magnetism and consciousness. At 3:17 a.m., I was ready. I sat in the hallway with every light on, my laptop recording, EMF detector in hand. The whispering started right on schedule, but this time, I could make out words. David. My name, clear as day, David, the pattern. The EMF detector spiked, the lights flickered, and in the wall, something moved. Not like an animal, like the wall itself was breathing. You broke the pattern, David. The nail, that southeastern nail, was glowing now. Actually glowing. A deep red pulse that matched my heartbeat. I've been trying, for so long, to warn someone. The voice wasn't threatening. It was sad, desperate. I'm not Margaret. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in seconds. My breath came out in clouds. I'm Sarah Walsh. He took me in 1932, aligned me like he aligned her, like he aligned the others. Others? The wall began to crack, not break, crack, like ice under pressure. Spiderweb fractures spreading from that glowing nail. 13 of us, all women, all taken when we discovered his secret, all held by the pattern, but you broke it. You can free us. The EMF detector was screaming now. The laptop sparked and died. And through the cracks in the wall I saw eyes, dozens of them, pressing against the inside of the plaster like it was skin. Pull the nail, David, please, before he... The voice cut off. The eyes vanished. The temperature normalized so fast my ears popped, and standing at the end of the hallway was a man. Old, impossibly old, wearing a suit that belonged in a museum. Ezekiel Brennan, but his eyes were black magnets, literally. 2 dark spheres that pulled at something behind my forehead. You shouldn't have done that, he said, and his voice was the sound of hammers on metal. The pattern keeps them contained, keeps them from becoming what they were meant to become. He took a step forward. The floorboard under his foot cracked. Do you know what happens to human consciousness at the moment of death? It dissipates, returns to the Earth's magnetic field, unless... He smiled, and his teeth were iron filings. Unless you trap it, align it, give it purpose. Another step, the walls groaned. I didn't kill them, you understand. I saved them. From dissipation, from nothingness. They exist forever in the pattern, and in return they give the house life. I wanted to run. Every instinct screamed to flee, but I couldn't move. Those magnet eyes held me in place. But you broke the pattern, and now they're waking up, remembering what they were, what they lost. They'll tear through the walls, David, through the town, through everything, searching for lives they can never have again. He was close enough to touch now. He reached out one pale hand toward my forehead. Unless we fix this, together, I'll teach you the pattern. You can be its new keeper. The house likes you, David. It let you find the nail. It wants you to... I moved, not away from him, toward the wall, toward that glowing southeastern nail, his face contorted with rage. No! But I was already there. My hand closed around the nail. It burned like ice, and I pulled. The sound. God, the sound. Like reality tearing, the nail came free, and with it, the walls exploded outward, not violently, softly, like petals opening, and from every surface they emerged. Women, 13 women, but not ghosts, not anymore. They were something between. Magnetic fields given form. Consciousness without flesh. Beautiful and terrible. Ezekiel screamed, a sound like rusting metal, and dissolved. Just came apart. Like iron filings scattered by opposing magnets, the women circled me. I could feel their presence in my teeth and my bones. Sarah Walsh, or what she had become, spoke without moving her lips. Thank you. We're free now, but... She looked sad. So impossibly sad. We can't stay. Without the pattern, without bodies, we'll dissipate within minutes. Return to the earth. But at least it will be our choice. One by one, they faded, became whispers. became wind, until only Sarah remained. "The house will die without us," she said. "It's been feeding on our trapped energy for over a century. You should leave. Tonight, before it realizes we're gone." She touched my cheek. It felt like static electricity. "And David, check your walls when you get to your new home. Make sure all the nails point north. All of them, always. It's an old practice, keeping things aligned, keeping things contained." She faded like morning mist, and I was alone in a house that was already beginning to sag. I left that night, grabbed only what I could carry. As I drove away, I saw the house in my rearview mirror, collapsing, slowly, gracefully, like it was finally allowed to sleep. I live in an apartment now, in Des Moines. It's modern, soulless, safe. But sometimes I check the nails in the walls, just to make sure they all point north, all of them, so far. But last week, I found one in the bathroom, pointing southeast, pointing exactly 142 degrees from magnetic north. I leave it alone now. Some patterns are meant to be. But if you're listening to this, if you made it this far, do me a favor. Check your walls tonight, count your nails. Make sure they all point the same way. And if you find one that doesn't, well, maybe it's nothing, maybe it's just chance, or maybe, just maybe, someone's trying to tell you something. Someone who's been waiting. Someone who's been watching. Someone who's been trapped in the walls for longer than you've been alive. Sweet dreams. Did you check your walls yet? I'm curious, how many of you found a nail pointing the wrong way? Let me know in the comments below. And if you're brave enough, tell me which direction it's pointing. If you survived this story, consider subscribing. I've got more tales about the things we don't notice, until it's too late. And remember, some patterns are there for a reason. Some things are meant to stay buried. Some nails should never be pulled. Sleep tight.